Just keep paddling all the way to the end.
Welcome back to 340 Paddler, and now you have made it to Lexington. So what do you do from here? And by the way, when you come into Lexington, if you come into Lexington, most years there will be a large bank of mud. I highly recommend using that to land your boat unless it is really nasty. The reason is that boat ramp will be very crowded even if it isn't a checkpoint. This will be sort of a good stopping point for a lot of people because there will not be another stop between here and Waverly. So let's move on down the river. You're off to Waverly. You're thinking, I can stop somewhere in between. There is not a good stop between Lexington and Waverly. There are a couple of spots where you can kind of get down there, crossing a railroad track and everything else. Don't do it. Just wait until you get to Waverly. It's 23 miles. It's going to be somewhere between, say, 3 hours and on the low end, maybe a little over 2. So it's not horrific. Just be prepared for it. And when you get to Waverly, the checkpoint time has changed. It used to be that Waverly was open until 9 p.m. on Tuesday. It is now open until 8 p.m. on Tuesday, which is fine. The vast majority of people will pass Waverly before 8 p.m. My first year, I finished in, I believe, 78 hours for the race, and I hit Waverly somewhere around 7:15. And was towards the back end of the field. So most people should be able to get there. Remember, the Reaper will be ahead, will be behind you, hopefully, leading you into Waverly. So, Waverly is 74 miles from the finish. Let's take a look at Waverly itself. There are actually two Waverlys, two boat ramps. First Waverly is the official checkpoint. So you are looking for this first checkpoint. When you come around, you're going to be following the river. You're over here. You're going to be crossing over, and you're going to come across a railroad track. So this is the first time that you're going to see a train track running along the river. That means that you're a couple of miles from Waverly. Here down to first Waverly is a couple of miles. So there is a little bit of distance there. When you get here, it's going to be really obvious that this is a checkpoint. There's a boat ramp. There's a long line of trees and parkland before you get there, where you'll probably see your ground crew, etc. And you can stop at the checkpoint. Now, if you're not going to stop there, that's fine. Make sure that you text in. And you do that as you pass Waverly. Or there is an alternative. If you want to avoid the crowd, you can go to second Waverly. And here on this map, which I have dutifully stolen from Google Maps, you see we have first Waverly here, and then maybe a minute downriver, maybe 2 minutes downriver is second Waverly. Now, in years past, there hasn't been a lot available here. Increasingly, there is food, etc. available. There's a bathroom here. There's a small pavilion here. So go to one or the other. Kind of play it by ear, but my recommendation personally would be to go to second Waverly. And the reason is there tends to be a smaller crowd. You get a lot of the rookies going to first Waverly because that's the official checkpoint. If you text in here at second Waverly, that's perfectly fine. You're all of a minute or two downriver from first Waverly. It's not really that big of a deal. You can text in at either one, but make sure you text in, and then when you leave, make sure you text out. We have to know when you get there, how long you're staying, and when you leave, so that we can track who's been through. This is important for the licensure that we get through the U.S. Coast Guard. So you're pushing on from Waverly. What's next? Well, from Waverly, and here all of the measurements, just like before, all of my measures were from Caw Point, the first checkpoint or the first point. These are all measured from Waverly, so they're always measured from the last checkpoint. 12 miles downriver of Waverly, assuming the river is at decent level, in other words, not too crazy high, you will come across Hills Island. This is 12 miles in. This is the first time that you would even want to think about sleeping. Do not even think about sleeping at Waverly because you won't finish the race. So you can think about it here. Some people do. I don't highly recommend it because it's only another 20 miles on. The advantage is, however, that there will be a large bonfire. There will be safety boats. It's a great place to stop, but your ground crew cannot get here. There's no way for your ground crew to get to Hills Island. So you're on your own, but it's a good place to rest and stop on your way to Miami. In fact, that's not a bad recommendation. Just keep in mind you're on the off-channel side. So the channel is going to be over here as you come in. And you will see this bonfire. Assuming it's dark, you will see it well before you get there. Then you have Miami. And actually, this is a misleading view. We're actually looking at where Miami comes off. So here's the eddy. Miami is actually around here. And Miami, you're going to see the light at night a couple of miles before you get there. During the day, you're going to see the flag a little ways before you get there. You'll see the bridge. Bridges tend to mark a lot of the checkpoints. Now, Miami is not an official checkpoint. However, it has the most amazing food you will come across. Well, there's Herman, but we'll get to that. At Miami, at night, or in the evening, the city of Miami uses this as a massive fundraiser. They build statues to Scott Mansker or something with the money. And they will lay out all sorts of cold salads. They will have sausages and hot dogs. They will have hamburgers. They will have all sorts of awesome food here. I highly recommend stopping at Miami. I do not recommend sleeping at Miami if you can avoid it. Now, for many of you, this may be a moot point. You may be sitting here saying, you know what, I'm going to sleep here. That's it. And that's fine. But if you can, you do want to push on from Miami, because if you can push off of Miami on night one, you're in great position for the rest of the race. By the way, at about 3, 4 in the morning, somewhere in there, they will flip the food that they're serving at Miami, and it will be pancakes. And they are phenomenal pancakes. They are full of energy and goodness and starch. I don't know, something. Fantastic food. So I highly recommend stopping. Now, from Miami, there's going to be about a 24-mile stretch where there really aren't any good stops. If the river is fairly low, like it was in 2012, 2013, etc., you will find sandbars starting to form after Miami. In this case, this sandbar is about 10 miles from Dalton, so probably about 14 miles out of Miami. And you start to see them forming. Great place to stop and relax for a minute. Sometimes you need to stretch your legs, and that's perfectly fine. If you're trying to be very competitive, of course, you wouldn't want to stop necessarily. But again, these videos are for everyone. And let's be honest, when I've run with the pack, you kind of hit a point after 2, 3, 4 hours in the boat that you really want to get out and stretch, even if it's for 5 minutes. And a lot of times that little 5-minute stretch can really give you a lot of energy for the next 2 hours moving forward. The next stop you're going to come across is Dalton Bottoms. Now, this is just an access. It is not a checkpoint. We are 12 miles upriver of Glasgow, 24 miles downriver of Miami. And as you come in, this is actually a very long straight that you're coming down. And you're over on river left, so Dalton is very convenient. And you're going to see the light, because there's, that singular light at a lot of these boat ramps. And it's going to look like the lamps you see out in the country highways. It's something like that. But you'll see it for miles before you get there. And it will be the only light that you see, and that's perfectly fine. Aim for it. You will find Dalton. It's not too difficult to get to. It is on the wrong side of the river for your ground crew, so a lot of ground crew will skip Dalton, but it is a great place to stop, stretch, etc. as you're making it through night one, especially if you're making that push to Glasgow, which is where I would recommend you stop for night one, if at all possible. Now, if it's a low water year, Miami might be it, and that's fine. But if possible, stretch to Dalton, which is usually fairly quiet, or go to Glasgow. If you make it to Glasgow night one, you're set for the race. You could almost float the rest of it, and you'll be fine. Now, Glasgow is 68 miles from Waverly, so it is actually a shorter stretch. Glasgow closes at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. And at this point, to get here on time, you have to be aiming for something along the lines of 3.4 miles an hour if you left Glasgow at 8 p.m. Now, of course, most people will go far faster than that. On average, even a relatively slow paddler like I was my first year is going to be averaging around 6 miles an hour, give or take. Now, a couple of things you need to know coming into Glasgow. You're going to come down from Dalton. It's a big, long, straight. There's a couple of S-curves coming down. And you're going to come along. You're going to see the bridge for Glasgow way before you get there. So you're going to get some glimpse of Glasgow. You're going to be out here. Then you're going to cross. And that crossing is actually incredibly important. You can make out here a series of wing dikes. What doesn't show up is right here, there's a massive sandbar in low or low-ish water years. You do not want to cut that corner. It is going to be very tempting to sit there and cut across this way. Don't do it. Stay on the outside of that curve all the way around. This is much faster water. You will get to the checkpoint much sooner this way. And as you come in, obviously this is not a picture taken during the 340, but you do not want to aim for this interior bay. What you want to do is aim for the channel, one of these two centerpieces, preferably this pier of the bridge. And then you're going to go through and then cut around to Stump Island, which is going to be up there. The reason you're going to do that is there tends to be a lot of debris around the pilings here, so you're staying clear of that. But also, you tend to get some very turbulent, ugly water right in here along shore. There's probably some debris from previous bridges, etc. So go through the middle, turn, come around, and into Stump Island from there. It will make your life a lot easier. And to give you an idea, we did have someone a couple of years ago that got into serious trouble here, got their boat caught in the debris around one of these piers and ended up floating downriver past Stump Island, past Glasgow. And Stump Island, Glasgow is the same thing. Be careful. Aim for the center, especially if you're passing through at night. During the day, again, it's probably something you don't have to be worried about. But at night, definitely something to think about. Aim for the center of the span and make sure you're going through the span with the green light, not the red light. Until next time, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.